Welcome to the Scale Forward podcast. Today, I'm talking with Julian, the founder of Tapley, the on-demand marketplace with live per-minute micro consulting and seamless AI-powered matchmaking. Tapley makes getting tailored coaching or monetizing your skills easier than ever. Welcome, Julian.
Thanks for having me.
No worries, Julian. So we were briefly chatting before. I'm very excited to have this conversation about Tapley. As with any good story, though, can you start us off with the origin story? What sparked the idea of Tapley? Was it a personal experience or was it a large gap in the market that you saw?
So it originated from the time that I sort of transitioned from my previous career, which was in sales, management, and energy, actually. So it really has nothing to do with what I'm doing. But I was transitioning into tech. I kind of always wanted to be a founder. I managed large teams and sort of was an operator, so I knew how to do that. And I just wanted to move into tech and start my own thing. And what ended up happening was essentially COVID happened. I started a boot camp and I was learning. It was like an intensive boot camp for UX and UI design, and COVID happened and kind of shut that down. The whole world shut down. And so I sort of was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna save the $15,000 I was gonna spend on that and sort of give myself an MBA and learn on the fly. So I sort of dove headfirst, and I wasn't 100% set on what I was going to build, but there's a lot of sort of infrastructure and operational stuff and technical stuff that you just sort of have to develop those skills. And so, long story short, I was wearing a lot of hats and was sort of a novice in most of them. And so I sort of found myself being in the situation where I didn't necessarily need a freelancer to do a project for me, but I also didn't want to just rely on YouTube how-to videos or, like instruction manuals or books to sort of learn how to use the software I needed to do and learn how marketing and fundraising and all the different skill sets that I needed. So what I really wanted was just somebody who had the specific expertise that I needed to learn, get on a call with me like we are right now and walk me through how to do and coach me how to do what I need to do. And it turns out that's actually pretty hard to acquire. There's not really like a good marketplace for that. So basically I had to do that manually. So I was basically collecting advisors and collecting people who I would do them a favor and they would be sometimes available, but that was very unreliable. Sometimes it's actually nice to have things be transactional because you kind of know what you're going to get. You can kind of forecast, okay, like I can rely on this person. When it's a friend helping you out, like you can't really get upset at them when they don't pick up the phone or don't have a call with you for a month. So that's kind of where the spark came from. I basically just asked myself, like, what if hiring a consultant was more like calling a cab than hiring an employee? That was the spark, and I was like, wow, that would be a really interesting future. That would be a really it would make my life a lot easier, and I think that it applies to a lot of people. So that sort of became the vision, which is make micro consulting as accessible and affordable as calling a cab. And that's
Okay.
we've been working to build, and we're close to launching pretty soon.
Really interesting concept that you said there. It's like, what if micro consulting was like calling a cab? Where, as you explained that, I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense. So I'm wondering, that's the specific moment that sparked the idea. So now how do we go, or how can founders go? You probably know what's coming next. How do you go from idea to execution? What was that process like in the early days? Because that's really hard, right? Everybody has an idea. And I saw a post from Gary Vee. It's like ideas are nothing, it's execution. So how do we do that?
Yeah. Well, I would say first you probably need to be somewhat okay with not having any money, respect, or time to do anything that you like. So just kind of embrace a long extended period of suffering without any sort of reward. I think that's probably what prevents most people from starting a company. I'm sure that some people kind of get product market fit and kind of have more capital to work with that have an easier path. But I mean, for me, I kind of took the hardest path you can take. Like, didn't really have capital in the bank, didn't really have accolades or a resume or background that would make anyone really think that like, oh, this, he's ready to do this. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily advise someone to do that. There's been a lot of iterations. It's funny. So that was my original spark. I sort of took like a year and a half detour in a way where I pivoted the company to a different product that was similar, trying to solve a similar solution, but was more focused on tapping your existing network. That's where the name Tapley came from
Right.
originally. And essentially, like, I convinced myself that that was a lower lift platform that I could sort of build the foundation for this larger vision. And it turned out that this larger vision actually, after a year plus of building that, it turns out that the grand vision actually is can be built faster, simpler, has a better business model. And so I pivoted back to the original idea. Now, it's sort of like when you come back, it's not like you're starting back from where you were. Like you're kind of back in the same area, but you've learned all of these lessons, like solve specific product problems in terms of user experience and stuff. And then you're like, oh, actually, I can do this thing that I didn't think I could do before.
I mean, the path to success often is like that for anybody that's ever tried to do something. What was some of the biggest challenges that you faced early on, and how did you overcome those?
Starting a company without capital and, like I said, like without sort of those prerequisites, it's really just this very, very long series of chicken or egg problems where you have to demonstrate this accomplishment before you can qualify to get this, and then do that about 20 times, and then you're kind of getting somewhere. To give you an example, like, how do you get someone to join your company when you don't have anything? I'll tell you one thing, which is like I met this guy. So I was on Y Combinator's co-founder matching program. This was 2.5, 3 years ago. I just had this idea. I didn't have anything, and I was trying to match people. I met this guy Eric, and he was like a very high level engineer, and I basically just kept calling him, and we would have like 2.5 hour calls, and he was kind of starting a company. I asked him to kind of join me. He's man of honor. He was like, I've committed to this. He's not going to do it. And I just kept calling him basically. And it came to a point where like we'd probably talk on the phone for like 9, 10 hours. He finally was just like, all right, like what is your budget? What can you do? And I'm like, literally $5,000. I'm like, that's my entire budget for self-funded. I didn't really have any money. $5,000 to build an MVP. That was obviously impossible. We
Mm.
didn't get close to building an MVP, but then he basically was like, all right, this is what I'll do. I will work 1 hour a day for you, and we will hire a team of interns that will build this MVP, and I will like be the project manager. So we hired interns, and then one of them was like pretty good, and it's 3 month internship, and then like Eric kind of had to leave, and that kind of the best intern sort of had gotten just to the point where he could start managing people. And right when Eric left, then we hired a team of interns under him, and we did that. Like there was like 3 or 4 cycles of that, and that was just to get us to the point of like anyone wanted to join. There's a narrow daylight where you can get through and like make it, and like it just, yeah, looking back on it, it's I think a lot of people feel this way. It was just like I would never do that. If I was in that situation, I would never do that again. So I think you need a healthy amount of ignorance and arrogance as well to do something as foolish as start a company by yourself.
And also some naivety. Like
Right.
sometimes
Yeah.
what you don't know is really good, because if you knew all of this
Exactly.
before you started, like you said, half of us wouldn't even
Right.
do it. And
Exactly.
also kind of making it up as you go along is also really handy. It's like face the problem that's in front of you, move forward, face the next problem. We might not
Yep.
know how to solve it, but we'll figure it out. As long as you're curious, naive, all the things that you just said, I think is really helpful to quality traits to have. Let's talk about sort of the approach to launching the app. Did you touch on when you took
Uh,
an exact timeline of launch?
mid to late February. To late
Okay.
February.
Okay, that's around the corner. What's the lead up to launch look like so far?
One thing they teach you at YC and a lot of places is like you don't get one launch. You get as many launches as you want. So the way we're approaching this is we're building something that's pretty new. It's a pretty unique user experience. Like it's really this is not a clone of anything else. This is built from the ground up. And so there's going to be some people are going to have to learn some new behaviors. Our first focus is to get the first 50 to 100 users, daily active users, basically, daily, weekly active users.
Okay.
And to iterate, we will get rapid feedback and iterate until we get that. And then that's when we start experimenting with more scalable distribution channels. And then when we discover the distribution channels that work the best, then we put marketing dollars into those channels. I mean, that's the broad strategy.
You said like when we discover these distribution channels that work best. Let's circle back to that because I'd like to know how you think you would find out how to do that. But before we lose some people, who is Tapley for? And can you describe an experience of someone like myself who would go onto the platform or the app and use it?
Yeah. So Tapley is a two-sided marketplace, and it's a platform where you can essentially quickly solve your problems. It's a marketplace for micro consulting metered per minute. I should say that first. So the mission and the vision really was to make micro consulting as accessible and affordable as calling a cab. A major part of how we do that is to completely open up the supply side of the market. Okay. So essentially, we open up supply, remove the gatekeeper, remove the barriers to entry, the red tape. Essentially, anyone can go on Tapley, and most people will go there to solve their problems, but you can instantly start monetizing your existing skills and earning money for just your knowledge at the comfort of your own home on your own schedule. And your home feed basically will be a feed of requests that other people are posting about what they need help with. Maybe it's Figma, maybe it's, you know, setting up Notion, maybe it's doing Google Ads or SEO or some sort of DevOps. We're focused on software tools, so it's right currently oriented around the specific software tools you need help with. But your feed is a feed of other people's requests is curated to your specific skills. And right now you just enter your skills like manually, but pretty soon phase two is intended for AI to just learn what your skills and interests are organically, and to essentially just learn to give you closer and closer to exactly which requests you'd be most interested in or most able and willing to help with. The idea is to open up the supply side because our philosophy is really that one of our core beliefs is that everyone's an expert in something. And the reason why most people aren't consultants, micro consultants, isn't because they don't have knowledge and expertise. It's because it's uneconomical for them in the current system to put together a freelance profile, build up a clientele, and worry about like vetting and back and forth and all this stuff. And that's the reason why people don't do it, because they don't have the time and energy to go through the rigmarole. It's not because they don't have expertise. So if you kind of remove all that stuff and provide a streamlined avenue for people to earn money for their existing knowledge, I think a lot of people will do that. And there's a lot of interest in doing that. And once we open up supply, then it opens up demand because it's so much more accessible, right?
You think about how clunky the old way is actually what you just mentioned. It's like I either go build go host my own website, get a design, like get that thing done, put it on there. Okay, how do I get eyeballs on this thing? I now got to do SEO. That takes ages. Or I got to run ads or I got to make content. Okay, cool. Or I go to Upwork, and that platform is not what it used to be at all. It's like
Yeah.
if anyone's ever been on Upwork recently, oh my gosh, BTF. Like it's brutal, right? It's like, and also I don't think many people are looking for expert consultants on that platform. So now we're over to where another platform or LinkedIn, and we're trying to, and the search to find these people is very clunky and difficult. So that is exciting and should be exciting for people who have skills, like you just said. You mentioned it's for many, many different skills, devs and everything like that. So I'm a dev, I'm hypothetically a dev, and not really a dev. And I go to Tapley and I'm on there. AI learns my stuff. How do you bring eyeballs to me individually versus all the other different devs that are on there? How do you envision that happening?
Yeah, sure. So like let's say you have a lot of experience in Mixpanel. I just came up with
Yep.
an example, right? Right now you'd manually enter that. In the future, AI will learn that organically. But so there's really two ways for me to find you. One is I can just kind of go to the experts, the category Mixpanel, and just see who has expertise in Mixpanel, and then message you directly, and we basically can negotiate. You can submit a bid, basically set your rate
Yep.
with each individual. So you can have an individual rate with each other party, and then essentially the way it works is it's the same as Uber, really, in a lot of ways. So you set your rate, you can bid on, hundreds, thousands of people's requests, whatever you have time for. And then there's an availability switch at the top, which basically is like the equivalent of Uber's accepting rides or not accepting rides. So when your availability is turned on, anyone that you bid to can just call you immediately, just like a phone call. And then once you pick up the phone, there's a customizable grace period, which you can also customize. So the minimum's 3 minutes, just there's a grace period before the meter starts. And then we're on a phone call. You can port the session over to your desktop with full screen sharing and all that. And then after the grace period's over, the meter starts. Whenever one of us hangs up the call, it's just like an Uber ride. There's a receipt, automatic payment, and that's it.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Am I going to be able to see, like, watch the costs go up while on the call? Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah.
I wonder how
Yeah,
many people say, and then try and drag it out. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I'd be lying if I said we haven't talked about that. But, that's sort of, it's one of those we'll cross that bridge when we come to it type thing. I think it's not going to happen too often. And there's more to it too. I mean, it's like as you go through the solutions, it's like you sort of keep hitting new problems, right? Like, okay, like then the next question is how do you account for the quality of people? Like how do you know what you're going to get?
Yep.
And there's two stages to this. Phase two is like kind of our AI build. Phase one, which we're launching in a few weeks, is more manual. So you essentially will rate the person, old school 5-star rating. But then the one little cool, I think, innovation is that the rating is weighted by the number of minutes in the session. So if you have a 60-minute session, let's just say you're 5-star, I gave you a 5-star rating, it would be 5 stars times 60. That's how many 5-star ratings you got, right? If it was a 5-minute call, it would be 5 stars times 5. So the longer the session is, the more heavily weighted your rating is, which it sort of takes care of like makes it harder for people to game the system, right? The rating system is essentially broken. Speaking of Upwork, like everyone on Upwork and Fiverr has 4.9 stars. So it's equivalent as if they all had 0 stars. It's the same exact thing. So they might as well not exist. So what we're going to do is instead of a rating system, we will have a AI generated scoring system. So AI will organically score each user in each category based on their activity on the platform. Now, how are we going to get that activity? So we will be offering, just like I had my read.ai note taker, we'll basically have AI transcribe and record every session. And obviously, the user can opt in, say, hey, do you want the record? You'll be able to have a searchable library of all of your past sessions, which I would say is a pretty big value add.
Yeah.
I think 95% of people will opt into that. So once we have that, now we have access to the transcripts, and we'll basically be training AI to recognize and score users' aptitude in each category. The only way to increase your score is to actually demonstrate that you've added value to people in English for now, whatever language. And so basically it is organic, so it doesn't require any manual work to do it. It just occurs from people's interactions, and it can't be gamed because it's just an objective aptitude score. It's not a subjective score. It's an aptitude score.
So that's interesting. And to paint a picture for people, so say you ask me a dev question about building that analytics in Mixpanel, and I answer with, I'm not entirely sure how to do that. Maybe this, maybe that. I don't really know. The AI is going to pick up on that, and is it going to be like,
Well, now we're getting
red flag, red flag, red flag.
Now we're getting to the execution of how we're actually going to accomplish
Yeah,
that.
if it's not there, then fair point.
We are not there at all. We're like
Okay.
just starting to sort of build out the like architecture diagrams of like how this could work. But I mean, we're pretty confident that the technology is there. I mean, I don't know what note taker you use. Do you use an AI note taker, by the way?
Yeah, I either use Fathom or Fireflies.
Yeah, I've heard of Firefly a lot. They kind of already do this. Like the amount of detail that they're giving based on like sentiment score and all that. So like the technology's there. It's just a question of like optimizing it for our specific purpose. So I'm not too worried about our ability to do that. I think that AI, like everything else, is an arms race. It's really exciting and super high leverage for a few months, and then people get wise to it, and then they counteract it, and then it has rapidly diminishing returns. So one thing that doesn't like I think isn't going anywhere is face to face and getting exposure and like genuine interactions with people. Whether even if it's like content that we recorded that's genuine, I sort of lean towards that a little bit.
And you've already done this? You said you've got some early adopters. Is that how you got these 100 eyeballs on the product already? You went to an event, boots on the
Um,
ground.
yeah, so I mean, we have like a wait list of a few hundred people. Many of them came from Web Summit. We were invited to
Okay.
Web Summit in Portugal, and it's like a 3 4 day event, and we had a booth and we had like a early prototype, but a lot of people on the wait list, and then our personal networks. So that was, yeah, I would say that was a direct sales event. But I'm not going to give specifics because like it is part of the like it is meant to be kind of, I don't want to say shocking. It's not meant to be shocking, but it's more like it needs to be a surprise. But
Specifics in terms of what you're
of
doing?
of of the specific guerrilla marketing events.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean that. So yeah, we have a few things planned that are exciting, and we will tackle all
I,
the.
I guess what you're saying is like just so others can get some
Yeah,
nuggets from this is like don't count it out. Don't count out the value of going to an event, doing this guerrilla marketing, boots on ground. It doesn't all have to be digital, is what
yeah,
you're saying. And that's the path that you've gone down because of previous experiences.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And also, but I like, yeah, I'm biased towards that because that's where my sort of experience and we know how to do that. Me and my co-founder sort of did direct sales and events for years. And so we just know how to do it. It's a formula just like anything else. And if
Yeah.
I had 5 years of SEO experience, I'd probably be focusing on SEO.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So actually, the lesson is whatever you know how to do best, do that first, is
Yeah.
what you would
I think
suggest. On the back of that, obviously, all the other stuff will come. So I imagine you go to these events, you get eyeballs on it, and then you'll get information, and then from there you'll build out all the other distribution channels to nurture or garner new eyeballs.
yeah. Yeah, go to events. I mean, honestly, like I think a really good test, and I mean, easier said than done. It's not like we've done this a ton, but we've done it a little bit. Like if you're not willing to literally walk up to strangers and ask them to download your app, like, it's I don't know. I don't have an end of that sentence. There's no like I'm sure it's not necessary, but I think that
Not
it's a
going to make it.
good litmus test. I don't want to say that because it's not true. Let's be honest.
I,
I doubt Bill Gates was walking down the street, walking up to strangers, asking him to download his app. So,
we're weeks away from launch. What are you most excited about?
I really like don't think about it in those terms, to be honest with you. I don't really think about, I don't really get excited. I don't think about being what I'm going to be excited about. Like I have the approach of I'm a general and I'm leading an army, and a general doesn't think about what he's excited about when you win the battle. You have to win the battle, and then you get to decide what you want to be excited about at that point. And it sounds intense. It's just that honestly is my mindset. I don't think about what I'm going to do when I cross the finish line until after I cross the finish line.
Sound like Kobe. Job finished, job not finished. Nothing to be excited about.
Exactly. Honestly. Yeah. And it's probably like I don't know how that comes off saying that, but I promise you when people ask me in private, I have the same answer.
So the platform's great, the idea is great. I think the elephant in the room perhaps could be that somebody could very well easily say, well, hey Julian, what about AI? Won't I just be able to go to ChatGPT and say, give me some consulting on how to do SEO and then get it for free?
Right. So I think that's the most common objections, or at least one of them. And so there's a few things I'll say. One is, if whatever AGI is, if AGI occurs where it's like smarter, more responsive, and truly can do every single thing a human can do, including like emote and make me feel a certain way and make me feel comfortable, then I think the bigger question, it's like, what is anyone going to do? What does a job even mean at that point? And I think really smart people are asking that question. So I think if that happens, essentially every single company except for like the internet companies and the infrastructure, perhaps the cloud computing, perhaps are going to go out of business or at least be obsolete. But I think that's not going to happen nearly as soon as people think. We're kind of building a new category, like micro consulting, and I actually think that's going to be like the last category to survive, and not to imply that this AGI is going to actually happen like that. If you look at what's happened over the history of the human race, like as we develop technology over the last 250 years, it essentially just takes away the jobs that nobody wants to do and the things that are kind of the grunt work, and kind of frees up people to do higher level jobs more, and jobs that are about interpersonal, team building and ideas and cooperating and having expertise. If you just look at the numbers, like 100 years ago, 90% of the population was farmers or miners, and basically you just go to a factory and you go home, and then that's it. There was no peer-to-peer knowledge exchange. There was just show up and move this one thing on in the factory line. So anyway, zoom to the present. AI is going to drastically, and already is drastically, empowering the individual. And as the individuals gets more empowered, essentially we kind of see a future where kind of everyone becomes an entrepreneur, essentially. That's the only, like, everyone's so powerful that you don't need it, the barrier to entry to starting a company is essentially nothing, like is like a small monthly fee for whatever software tools you need. So essentially, our product is intended for entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial minded people who kind of are self-learners and problem solvers, and people that are resourceful and looking for solutions. They're not looking for a job where just they're told what to do every day and they show up and leave. I kind of see us as going to where the puck is going, which is a world where the individuals are far more empowered than they are today, and work is far more distributed and peer-to-peer and essentially a la carte. So I kind of think there's a future where people don't really have jobs in the sense that we do today. People have knowledge, and people have money that they're willing to spend to acquire knowledge, and we're just all exchanging knowledge, and there's no need for bosses or corporations, big corporations. All right. I mean, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, probably. There's still probably going to be need for corporations. But anyway, yeah.
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up the pod and let people ponder about Julian. But thanks so much for sharing the story behind Tapley today. Exciting about the journey that you guys are on. Look forward to seeing where you're at sort of mid-year. But for our listeners, where can they learn more about Tapley? Where can they stay updated with it, with the launch, and where can they download it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Russell. So we are in the app stores. We're, live in the app stores. We're launching publicly in the next, sometime mid to late February. Check us out. Our website is tapley.us. And yeah, we'll be releasing some cool content soon. We're going to have some fun sort of guerrilla style marketing events, and we're going to record content and post them. So keep an eye out for that too.
And any links that you want me to put where they can find that, they'll be in the description below. But yeah, thanks again for jumping on.